And welcome to the Buffalo Basement Podcast. I do want to thank all of our viewers for joining us tonight. I am Matt Digert. We are joined by, as always, my co-host Pat Bruckness at PatTheBill5 on Twitter. And if you can see below us, we have a very special guest tonight from Cover One, Greg Tompsett. And I'll let him introduce himself here in a second, but I do want to take care of some admin stuff real quickly. The Buffalo Basement Podcast is brought to you by the Stang Insurance Consulting. Definitely check them out. And with that being said, let's go ahead, Greg, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to be able to hang out here tonight and talk some Bills.
Absolutely. So I just want to kind of go a little rundown with what we're going to do with Greg tonight. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the Steelers game. We're going to try and forget it as much as possible, but there was some good takeaways from that game that we do want to go over. We're also going to go over what we can expect to see from and what to watch for the Bears game on Saturday. And then we'll go over a little bit of like maybe some roster sleepers, some projections that we may see on Tuesday. And maybe go over how the wait in the parking lot type stuff works for them as well. So cool. With that being said, I just want to first of all thank you, Greg, for coming on. I do also want to thank you also for pushing me into starting the Buffalo Basement Podcast. I really appreciate you with that. And with that being said, I do want to get to some news around the NFL real quickly. First, there was 3 trades today that went down. The Arizona Cardinals made 3 trades. One of them was to send Isaiah Simmons to the New York Giants. The second one, I know Greg was a little upset about, was Josh Jones going to where did he go? The Texans. I'm sorry. Correct. And then they brought in Josh Dobbs from the Cleveland Browns. So first and foremost, why were you so upset about the Josh Jones one?
So obviously, as you look around the league, backup tackles are similar to like backup quarterbacks and things like that, where there's not a lot of spare guys floating around who are good. There's not a lot of guys who are going to make a difference and be impactful on what you're doing. So you're looking around and be, all right, who has, because you got to think about it. I know I am amongst the group with frustration for Spencer Brown. However, I mean, Spencer Brown started almost every game last year at right tackle while we scored the second most points in the league. He's obviously not so horrible that he's going to tank an entire season. So you have to look around and say, okay, who has these 2 things? A tackle as good or better than Spencer Brown, who are also going to trade them away 3 weeks before the season starts. So you look around and you look for, obviously, anytime you're looking to gain talent, you're looking for who are teams who maybe aren't as focused on winning right now. Arizona Cardinals, that's a good one. Who may be invested in a top pick, which is also the Cardinals. So when they drafted Paris Johnson, they were in a position where, hey, they just drafted a top 10 offensive tackle. I wonder who was starting there last year. And I'm kind of talking through with fans because this is the process I go through when I'm looking for trade candidates. When you're trying to reverse engineer, it's easy to go, oh man, I'd love an offensive tackle. I wonder if we could go train for Lane Johnson because he's awesome. I trade for him in Madden. That would be great. Well, guess what? The Eagles aren't going to trade Lane Johnson. That's not how that works. So you look and say, okay, well, I know the Cardinals have DJ Humphries. He got hurt last year. So both Kelvin Beachum and Jason Jones played for them.
Jason Jones, thank you.
So Justin Jones. I just messed it up myself. Played last year. Well, they just drafted Paris Johnson, I think 7th overall, if I recall. So they have guys who are good enough to play. You go back and look, they're not awesome, but they both played better than Spencer Brown did last year. So I was frustrated because I thought it was an opportunity to upgrade from David Quessenberry and at a minimum push Spencer Brown. I don't think that Jones was going to come in and immediately start day one. And Josh Jones was not going to come in and take that job from Spencer Brown that day. But now you're talking about a very minimal trade-off. You're talking about a Dane Jackson, Christian Benford situation where, hey, which guy starts? I don't know how much it matters. They're both pretty good. It's not a huge difference. You're now protected. There's a higher floor. So that's why I was excited. Unfortunately, Houston has the same issue because Titus Howard, their right tackle, is hurt and out for probably the first, 4 to 6 weeks. So they're looking to protect their, whatever number 2 overall pick quarterback, CJ Stroud.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. And honestly, if the Bills and the Texans both offer the Cardinals 5th round picks, which one are you going to take?
The Texans, obviously.
Take the Texans. So I don't know, in the moment, was I probably frustrated enough that of course I would have given up a 4th round pick? I don't really know if I would have given up a 4th round pick for Josh Jones. It's probably getting pretty close to where that's paying an awful lot. Josh Jones is a free agent after this year. It's not like some long-term deal you have locked down. So it was just, he happened to be the guy who checked the boxes. And I was kind of talking about him for the last week or so. So then to be right about the fact that, hey, he is gettable, and to see somebody else get him for a frustratingly reasonable price, I did lose it for a moment. So, it was just something that I got a little frustrated with.
So as far as the difference between, and I know age is a thing too, but between Jones and Beachum, I mean, what's the real difference between them if the Bills were to go out and give them a 5th for Beachum? I mean, would that be like the same kind of?
Yeah. For the Bills, no difference. For the Bills, no difference. For another team, maybe looking beyond this year, obviously, I think there's 9 years difference between the two of them. I think one's 25 and one's 34. Right. So at least eight years and change, if not 9 full years. Obviously, there's beyond the 2023 season, there's plenty of difference. Right now, I don't really think there's much difference at all. I think they're both pretty good, either above average swing tackles or below average starters. They are the Tyrod Taylor of tackles. Where hey, he's probably not excited if he's your starter, but he's probably better than almost every team's backup. Mm-hmm. That's the spot where you're in with either guy. And I will say, I don't know that the Cardinals are done. Maybe they still do move Kelvin Beachum, and if they do, Bills fans should. It's not something that you're going to celebrate and be super excited about, but he's good. He's better than David Quessenberry, and I don't know if he's better than Ryan Vandemark is going to be, but I feel more comfortable that I know what he is versus putting all my eggs in the basket of, hey, let's pray we found something with this undrafted free agent.
Right, and that was actually my next question is can Vandemark do the flip? Because I know he's been backing up Deion Dawkins, and I know it's a difficult thing to go from left and right tackle. So I didn't know if he could do that side.
I don't think any of us know the answer to that. I want to give a shout out. Joe Biscaglia did a really nice write-up on Vandemark in The Athletic. I recommend it for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about him. This is a guy who he was in camp with the Colts last year, got cut around cut-down day, floated for a minute, then the Bills claimed him, and the Bills pretty much had him on their practice squad for the rest of the year, did the futures contract, and he's really flourished and got a lot of positive attention. He's just learning to play left tackle well enough at the NFL level that I don't know that he's ready. He's talked about the fact that he's trying and trying to do what he can, but I will tell you, when we watched him in the game, he was way better at left tackle than he was at right tackle.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just he went against the wrong guy. This was in the Colts game more so than the Steelers game. But in the Colts game, I mean, he got roughed up a couple times around the edge, and guys beat him pretty handily. Left tackle, he was a stone wall and would look like genuinely exciting. So right now, I believe he is a backup left tackle only. In that, I often say this on the show, like people always throw around we got to try him. It can't be any worse. Of course it can get worse. Of course it can get worse.
You have a $258 million quarterback.
Correct.
There that a guy on the roster tore his UCL last year. So
as of right now, I am still under the impression David Quessenberry is a better right tackle than Ryan Vandemark. And that's, as of right now, if nothing changes on the roster, that's my assumption, short of a mystery move from Ryan Bates would be the only other thing I could think about. Right now, it's Ryan Vandemark left tackle, David Questenberry right tackle, and we either need to add a guy or roll with that and cross our fingers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any bringing anybody in. There's no real, we had Shell retire and then Tommy Doyle get hurt within 3-4 days of each other. So there goes both your backup right tackles. And that, unfortunately, that's what happens in the NFL. I mean, look at the Jets. They just had Corey Davis retire. They were probably looking at as their 2 or 3, in wide receiver, and they lost a weapon.
Yeah.
So it happens. But now, leading into the Steelers game, I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. But what were your major takeaways from there, other than Dalton Kincaid is going to be a huge problem for the NFL?
Yeah, so obviously, and I said this on our show last night, it can both not really matter and still suck. Like, it still sucked. It wasn't fun. That wasn't a good experience to sit through and watch. That was painful for everybody. Mm-hmm. For anybody who saw my feed, I had an awesome weekend. My family was in town staying with us. We went to a baseball game Friday night. We went to the Hall of Fame all day on Saturday. Got home. My mom made rigatoni and meatballs. We're sitting there and had a big, awesome meal. And then we sit down to watch the game, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was just, what the hell is this? So on the one hand, I don't want to be completely dismissive because they didn't look good. On the other hand, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, people have thrown around the example the year before the Texans beat the Chiefs and the Bears beat the Eagles in preseason. Didn't seem to hurt them all that much. Like, it's just not. Teams aren't game planning to win the game. They're game planning to see situations. And one of those situations, my partner over at Cover One and the best film guy that I know, Eric Turner, broke down. There was an awful lot of isolated 7-step drops with no tight end, no fullback, no running back, and Josh taking 7-step drops. We don't ever do that. Like, we don't ever, and we might not see that all season. So I think they were looking to see some things. Maybe they were looking, can we add that to the arsenal and have that in our back pocket? Also, they might have been wanting to see, hey, let's see how Osiris Torrance and Spencer Brown pass off, stunts and twists when they don't have any help. Let's see how this looks in these situations. So I don't think the team was not setting them up to fail, but the team was setting them up to evaluate some things that we may not see in the season. So all that said, doing that showed them, and the evaluation was, you can't do that. We are not ready to do that.
Yeah.
Spencer Brown is not ready to be left in isolation. He needs a chip. He needs Dawson Knox. And one side note of how much 12 personnel we're going to run this year. Everybody's excited about the Dalton Kincaid part. Rightfully, we should be. He looks awesome. A really underrated part is it's going to be great to just bolt on Dawson Knox next to Spencer Brown for 60% of our snaps. It's going to be great. That's going to be really helpful. So all those things, Osiris Torrance looked good. I think the defensive line actually looked solid and had some nice plays. I think Justin Shorter had a nice game. Trent Sherfield looked really good. Gabe Davis, some of the important stuff. Josh Allen looked awesome. Josh Allen had a couple lasers that got called back. A lot of the important stuff actually looked pretty good. Unfortunately, everyone was so focused on linebacker and right tackle, and those things didn't go that well, that made it seem like, oh, everyone sucks, and it doesn't. They're going to be fine, but it doesn't mean it was fun to watch, because it wasn't.
No, and that's one of the things that I've heard, all week since the Steelers game from Twitter and Twitter Spaces and different podcasts is Deion Dawkins had a horrible game, which I don't think he did. I think he had a couple situations.
He had a couple horrible reps. He did have a horrible rep or two, maybe two, but it wasn't.
Correct.
He played 19 snaps and maybe 2 of them were iffy.
Yes, no, and that's one of the things that is, I think he had an average game. He just was there. He was there. That's his normal self. And hopefully they'll get up for the preseason and we don't see more average play from that, because they really do need to protect Josh. And the one thing that I took away from the game, specifically watching Torrance and Brown, is their ability to, in certain situations, pass guys off. There was one at the beginning of the game where TJ Watt spun right into, did that spin, and Spencer Brown passed him right off how he's supposed to.
Yep.
And I think that was the play that led to the 17-yard pass play to Gabe Davis. I can't remember if it was that one or if it was the one where Josh threw it in the dirt, but those are the couple things that I like to see personally. And that's what I've always watched for in preseason. So,
and that's, there's things you can take away that they're working on, that they're trying to do, but there's also things where you don't want to read too much into it. It's, okay to kind of throw it out. And one last thing is, I don't think it's the worst thing that the coaching staff now gets to hang this over their heads for a couple weeks leading into the game, that like, oh, you think you can just show up and be the Buffalo Bills and teams are going to lay down for you? You think all you have to do is walk out onto that field and you get a W? You have earned nothing. You have to go out there and redo everything. You have to earn this game by game every single time. I don't hate that they got that smack in the face early on rather than in a game that counts, because we've had that happen a couple times. Even in everybody only remembers the end of the 2021 season. Yeah, 2021 season. Yeah.
22 season?
No, 2021, with like ending in the greatest shootout back and forth
with
the Chiefs and like the perfect playoff game and like that awesome run. Well, guess what? That season was also the game where we could only score 6 points against the Jaguars. That season was also the season where, we were losing to the Falcons going into halftime of the second to like 2 games before the perfect game.
Yeah.
We had a horrendous, maybe one of Josh's worst games as a starter. Nobody remembers that. They just remember the awesome ending with the perfect playoff game and then the shootout with the Chiefs. It's that kind of thing. It's not always linear. It's not always perfect. It's okay getting that wake-up call, maybe earlier in a game that didn't count.
Oh, and the last thing before we move on to the Bears game is that's one of the things I've noticed within the media this year. I'd rather them be underdogs. I would absolutely rather them come in and not have the focus be on them, because it lets them just go play instead of having this huge pressure to go out and win the Super Bowl, go out and win, these huge shootout games, go out and beat Kansas City. Obviously, we know they have to do these things, but it may be easier, and they seem like they thrive in that position rather than in the top spot.
Yeah,
correct. We want them to be in the top spot, but yeah.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think that maybe we need to start learning how to be a front runner. Maybe we need to learn how to thrive while being in that position. It was something the Patriots had the exact same transition. Their entire first run, they were the underdog. They were the team nobody believed in, and they kept overcoming the odds. Well, then they kind of had to switch, and they still found plenty of reasons to tell themselves nobody believes in us. That is, hell, last year, the Kansas City Chiefs were by far the number one favorite in the playoffs, and they still talked about it at the Super Bowl parade. We told you, nobody believed in us. Everybody believed in you. You guys were awesome. It's just pro athletes do that all the time. The Bills probably need to work on how to make that transition, but in the grand scheme of things, they're in a much better position when, I love the idea that Sean McDermott gets to put those things up where there's 4 panelists on ESPN and 2 of them are picking the Dolphins and 2 of them are picking the Jets, and literally no one's picking the Bills to even win the division, let alone go anything beyond there. Just put those up on posters all over the weight room, all over when you're working on getting that one extra sprint in at the end of practice. Show them that. I'll deal with that. When you have people debating, is this year the Bills missed the playoffs? Absolutely. Just play that on a loop in the building.
It's almost like you want Josh to play Rocky and put that in his mirror and tear it down like Ivan Drago. But, with that being said, let's move on to the Bears game here. From your point of view and kind of the things you're going to be watching for this week, I know this week we found out today the starters are going to be playing. Personally, I think that it's going to be one series. I'm okay with it after the way that things happened last week.
I agree.
Come out, score a touchdown, get the bad taste out of your mouth, go sit down.
I still don't think it's necessary, but I'm okay with it with how bad that went. Mm-hmm. I think you phrased it perfectly. I hope it's one series. I would love if they come out, drive down the field, score a touchdown, and then everybody who matters go sit down.
Yeah. So with that being said, though, so let's hypothetically say that that's what happens. What are you going to be watching from like second and third teamers?
So I've talked this entire camp. This is one of the more defined Bills rosters I can remember. There are not that many actual competitions. Now, there's some starting competitions. There's, obviously we had the whole thing about who the right guard would be, who the slot receiver would be, who the starting linebacker would be. But, Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield are both making this team. Cyrus Torrance and Ryan Bates are both making this team. The linebackers, maybe not everybody makes the team. We'll see. We'll see about that one. But those ones were the interesting parts. The end of the roster, there's not a lot of mystery at quarterback, running back, tight end. There were some fun stories that, hey, did someone like a Jay Sternberger have a chance, or did a Eli Ankow have a chance? Sure, some of those guys did, but it didn't end up playing out that way. Jordan Mims did a nice job, but he didn't ever threaten Latavius Murray for his job. So I'm going to be looking in those handful of spots where there actually is still some question. So I think Balin Spector and Cam Lewis might be fighting for one spot. I think I'd still like to see. I would have loved if Terrell Bernard was ready to play. I cannot assume he hasn't even practiced yet. He was out there in pads the last 2 days with his pads on doing drills, but not fully practicing. I cannot imagine they're going to put him out there in a game. I would like to have seen that. So I'll go through. I'll see another rotation of AJ Klein and Terrell Dodson. I actually expect it to be AJ Klein out there first and Terrell Dodson out there second. I don't, as sad as it is, I don't think we really need to see that much more Dane Jackson. He's just clearly been the best guy, so you might as well give Christian Benford and Kyrie Elam a handful more reps, let them compete, but Dane Jackson's going to start. He is. He's taking that job.
Yeah, not to stop you or anything like that, but with Dane Jackson, I mean, it seems like he fits better in that cornerback 2 role.
Well, and here I'll ask you,
yeah.
What was the most common complaint about Dane Jackson, about the thing he didn't do?
Is he really couldn't cover.
Well, he's usually making a play on the ball. Usually hey, he was in position and his feet were on the right spot, but he wouldn't make a play on the ball.
Right,
Honestly,
like that really good throw from Kirk Cousins last year against, and
correct.
He was at the end zone. He was in position, and Justin Jefferson still caught it over top of him.
Correct. And I'll give him a pass. Justin Jefferson's pretty awesome. But, but what have you seen so far this preseason?
He's been making plays on the ball.
Made quite a few plays on the ball. So I think everybody came in, and the idea of what I wanted Kaiir Elam to be is better than Dane Jackson. Kaiir Elam hasn't been better than Dane Jackson. The idea of what I wanted Kaiir Elam to be is better than Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson has been better. He's the better football player. So until that changes, we're not going to see a change in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think it's going to take for Kaiir to take that next step? Is that something mentally, or is that something physically? Is it?
Gotta stop grabbing people. I don't know that it's that terrible. Now, there's a domino effect to that. He's grabbing people, and that's the part we see. The reason he's grabbing people is he doesn't have his feet in the right position. He's not beating them to the spot. So when he's not there to beat him to the spot, he grabs. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that's a level of recognition. He's a good enough athlete to do it. He's tall and long and fast and all the things you want in a cornerback. He's smart, and all those different pieces are, good, but it's something where I don't know how to train that. I don't know if that's forcing reps and seeing it's there. You can't do that in regular season and just let them roast him and just get defensive pass interference penalties. So we need to see more of it in the preseason here to go there. And then part of it's in practice. You heard them last year. They made him wear boxing gloves in practice because he couldn't stop grabbing. So as long as we're hearing stuff like that, it's something that I'm not well versed enough in, like cornerback drill, technique and drill to know, what does he need to work on to get his feet in the right position where he doesn't feel like his only option is to grab the receiver. Like some of that's kind of innate in your mind. Like you need to tell yourself not to do that. I'm not 100% sure what drill he needs to do to work on that, but that's also part of the problem is I'm not 100% sure what he can do to fix it.
So that kind of leads me into the last thing that I have for you, and then I know Pat has a few questions for you. So, but as far as roster sleepers, because watching 2s and 3s, watching those position battles, things like that, like you said, Balin Spector, Cam Lewis might be fighting for one specific spot. Who do you think makes it onto this roster? Because there's really not a lot of room for a lot of these guys.
So there are going to be some interesting questions on who we can fit onto the practice squad. We have more practice squad spots. We have more veteran spots because of the rules. So there's some things that are going to go there, but there's some where, I don't know who. There's going to be one spot. People brought up when we signed Ty Johnson. There's probably one practice squad spot for a running back. So I don't know if that's going to be Jordan Mims or Darrington Evans, or maybe Ty Johnson has a spot on it, but there's probably only one. We've seen some different things from the tight end Wilson and Sternberger and some different pieces there. There's probably one spot for a practice squad tight end. At offensive line, we're going to have some good interior guys who aren't even going to make the team. Like I don't think Ike Botker has that good of a shot to make the team. And he's probably a guy you invite back on practice squad. So when we get to linebacker, I had in my mind for a long time that it was going to be the AJ Klein was like the Duke Johnson of linebackers, where he was going to be the veteran in the room, but he was actually going to do it from practice squad. And that was why we only signed him with $100,000 signing bonus, because we weren't going to eat a bunch of dead cap and then we'd bring him back and be on the practice squad. Well, now Terrell Dodson's played so poorly that I kind of think we need to keep Klein on the roster, and that Klein might be the safety blanket until Terrell Bernard's healthy enough to play. I thought Terrell Bernard was the most likely starter from the beginning of camp, and then his hamstring injury kind of threw a bit of a wrench into that. So I don't know. Right now, I think Balin Spector got a shot, showed them he wasn't quite that guy, and also showed them that it's probably not critical that they keep him on the 53. That so Terrell Dodson's poor play weirdly might have cost Balin Spector a roster spot, because I think they're going to force them to keep AJ Klein, which means Balin Spector gets bumped off. I won't lie, if it was me, I would just eat the guaranteed money and cut Terrell Dodson and keep Balin Spector.
Yeah.
But I don't expect them to do that. I don't expect them to. I agree with 90% plus of what Brandon Beane does. I can't for the life of me figure out why he gave a fully guaranteed $2.1 million deal to Terrell Dodson. Now, Terrell Dodson is a roster caliber NFL player. He deserved to have a shot and be invited into a camp and to compete for a spot, and should have gotten a veteran minimum contract with nothing guaranteed. The fact that they gave him more than Taylor Rapp. They gave him more than Damian Harris. They gave him more than David Edwards, some good football players and they gave him more than that and guaranteed all of it. They didn't guarantee any of those guys all the money. None of those guys got fully guaranteed deals. Not that 1.77 or 2.1 is a big guarantee, but they guarantee. So we have to pay him the same amount of money whether he makes his team or not. So I don't know. I will say everything I just rattled through also applied for O.J. Howard last year.
Yeah.
And we cut O.J. Howard. Right. So I think it's unlikely that we cut Terrell Dodson, but I don't know that it's completely out of the question. And there's a path where our linebackers are, Tyler Medikevich is a linebacker like Tywan Jones was a running back, but he technically counts as one. So But our linebackers are Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, AJ Klein, Balin Spector, and maybe that's the way it goes into the season. Technically, Matakevich,
And Dorian Williams.
and Dorian Williams. I don't think it's crazy that that's possible.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree. Last one I have is, do you see any path to the roster for Isabella at this point? Or is he more, I saw your thing about the whole waiver, no waiver thing. So
that's the path. That's the path. I don't think he's actually done enough to take Khalil Shakir's job. Khalil Shakir has had some down moments. He's had some disappointing moments. He's also had some good ones. He's also had some good moments. I don't think he's a roster lock. I think there are 4 locks in the wide receiver room, and that we obviously know Diggs and Davis. Deontay Hardy's been awesome. Trent Sherfield's been amazing. Those 4 are locked in, and they are our top 4 receivers. They are going to get the most snaps at receiver. They're going to get the most catches, the most targets. They're going to be our top 4 receivers. I think Khalil Shakir is 5th, and I think Justin Shorter is 6th. Justin Shorter had a really good game this last game. He also looked better on special teams. I think he's pretty locked in. Khalil Shakir, I'm 90%, but he also broke his ribs, or it has a rib injury, and it sounds like it's reasonably serious. So when I go down my path every year, I talk about the who's the wait in the parking lot guy. It was Andre Roberts for a little bit. We've done it with Reed Ferguson. There is a scenario where Andy Isabella is also that guy. He has no guaranteed money, so we could sit him, we could cut him, tell him, hey, just stay here in the hotel overnight. We'll call you tomorrow. Keep Khalil Shakir, put Khalil Shakir on short-term IR for 4 weeks because he has broken ribs.
Right.
Bring back Andy Isabella and then deal with it in week 5 and see, hey, who's healthy, who's ready, what are we going to do? That, in my mind, is the path. If Khalil Shakir is healthy, I think Andy Isabella has been a great story. I think that he's done almost enough, but I don't actually think he's done enough to cut Khalil Shakir in order to keep him. Because honestly, I also think we could get Andy Isabella onto the practice squad. I know it's been a fun story. People are excited. They also got to remember he was doing tryouts in August because every team in the NFL opened camp with 90 guys on their roster and not him.
Right.
So I don't think I don't think the GMs feel the same way that our fan base does about him. And now he has been a pleasant surprise since then, so it's not out of the question. But I actually think we could probably get him out of the practice squad without too much trouble.
I mean, there is one every year. So
there's
a
Brandon Riley
every year,
and David Sills and
Derrick
Rogers and everybody. It's a constant cycle. Duke Williams.
So, and I know Pat had some questions before.
Yeah, please.
We got to get you.
Yeah, we'll do some rapid fire. I'm ready.
Go ahead,
Hi,
Pat.
Greg. First of all, thank you for coming on.
Of course.
And my first question for you is, there's been a thing going around on Twitter saying possibility of 7 wide receivers on the 53. Do you think that's a possibility? Because I don't think it is.
So, obviously, we haven't seen a history of it. There have been a few games where we technically had 7 on the roster. For the most part, it's been 6, and it's almost always 5 active on game day, but it's usually 6 receivers. The one caveat is if you count our skill players, last year we had 4 running backs because Tywan Jones was one of them, a fullback, 6 receivers is 11, the 3 tight ends is 14. Well, there's another path to have 14 where it's 3 running backs, 1 fullback, 7 receivers makes 11, and the 3 tight ends makes 14. So if you think about it in the sense that last year we had 2 coverage guys in Tywan Jones and Kumaro, 1 returner, and then Gilliam also covered in tight end. Well, we could have the same thing. Deontay Hardy's the returner. You have 2 coverage guys in Trent Sherfield and Justin Shorter. So in theory, you could build a roster that way with 14 skill position guys. I think it's more likely that our offensive line depth and defensive line depth is going to, or even our defensive backs, our DBs, we have 11 of those we could keep. I think it's more likely that the 7th receiver doesn't lose out because we won't keep 7. The 7th receiver is going to lose out to Tim Settle or Shaq Lawson or Cam Lewis. And that's the guy they're actually going to lose out to, not because we're unwilling to keep 7.
Okay. And have we ever had 7 receivers?
Not to open a season. Not in the opening 53. There was maybe 2 or 3 games where we did have them that many on the roster just because of other teams, other guys got put on IR, other spots. But for the most part, for an opening 53, we have never had 7 receivers.
Okay. Well, my next question for you is, do you think we'll see a extension for one of our players currently before the season starts? Maybe Gabe Davis, Daquan Jones, Micah Hyde?
The only one I could see before the season is Gabe Davis. I do think it's very possible that Daquan Jones or Micah Hyde get extended. Both of them would be the kind of mid-season extension you would do because you see an older player still playing very much at that same level. And now you're like, okay, you're still the same guy. We're ready to sign back up. Let's do it. Gabe Davis is the one where I actually get a little bit nervous. If we don't extend Gabe before the season, I think we might lose him. I think if he gets to play out and get the chance to be a free agent, there's not a ton of reason for him to extend after the year. So I kind of think we have like a 3-week window here to extend Gabe Davis and get it done. Although I will say the one exception we saw there with a younger guy on his first contract, I think Taron Johnson was like 4 or 5 games into the year that we saw Taron's extension. So it's not completely unprecedented, but I would guess that the only one we would see before the year is Gabe Davis. And I think it's probably unlikely.
I hope we re-sign him. I hope we do.
Same.
We want another Tremaine Edmonds situation where he out himself out of here.
Yeah. How many people spent the last couple of years telling me how much trash Tremaine Edmonds was, and how many of them want him back now?
And now they miss him. Everybody misses him because we're having such an issue at middle linebacker.
Yeah, funny how that works.
And now my last question for you was the Connor McGovern injury. Do you think that's serious?
So serious is a relative term. He left the field, but he stayed and watched on the sideline. So they didn't take him in for x-rays or MRIs immediately. But he grabbed at his knee and they put a sleeve on, which means there probably was swelling. So I think it's very possible we have like an MCL kind of thing here. I don't think it's like long-term serious, but some of those things can be 4 weeks. Some of those things can be 4 to 6 weeks. It can. I don't know. We don't know enough yet. I haven't heard anything about an MRI. I haven't heard anything that direction. So I don't think it's nothing. I think that there's a chance it could be something, but I also don't think it's like some serious knee injury that's going to keep him out for a long time. But I don't know that week 1 is a guarantee, because anytime you have something with the knee, they're going to be cautious and not want to rush through it.
So is he more a pup or more short-term IR if it were to be something small like that?
So he can't be on PUP because once you pass a physical, you no longer can be on PUP. They obviously are not going to put him on IR, because if they do IR now, he's out for the year. So he would have to make the 53. And that would be where Reed Ferguson would come into play. You could do both Khalil Shakir and Connor McGovern. You would technically release Reed Ferguson and release Andy Isabella, put Connor McGovern and Khalil Shakir on short-term IR, and then re-sign both. I don't have any indication that it's so long that Connor McGovern would need to miss 4 games. Even if it was 4 weeks, that's like in between week 1 and week 2.
Week 2, yeah.
Yeah, so I have not that I'm aware of, that short of there being new information or something else reported, I haven't heard anything that makes me think we're looking at a longer term thing than that. But I do think that's possible. I think that's right now the worst case scenario, is that maybe he's not ready for week 1, but I don't have any indication that it would need to be a short-term IR thing. But we'll see.
Perfect. So we did run a little long with you. You
No, it's
did
okay.
say that was
It's okay.
but
Pat, if you have one more, I'll do one more, then I gotta go.
That's all I have.
All right, perfect. This was a ton of fun. I appreciate it, and I know, Matt, you said that at the beginning, and I want to commend you on taking the leap here to get rolling with your own show, and that's always my recommendation. There's a lot of people who are very sharp and knowledgeable with their football understanding and their ability to kind of think through what to say. It's a lot harder to produce a show and to know the work that goes into it and all the different things of setting up and researching and having structure and explaining the different pieces of it. And that part of it is the big hump to get over. So I commend you guys for taking this leap and wish you all the best with the Buffalo Basement going forward.
Thank you, Greg. Definitely check out his show. What is that, Friday night at 7, 8?
Yeah, so I'm actually shifting now into football mode. We're going to be doing Sunday nights, doing kind of recaps around the league. So this Sunday night, I'm actually going to have Victoria from Football Guys on the fantasy side of it, and Taylor Kyles from the Patriots are coming on, and we're going to do kind of a roundtable going around what we've seen so far in preseason. And then you guys can see me every Wednesday night and every post game with Aaron Quinn on the Cover One Buffalo podcast.
Perfect, Greg. Well, definitely any of our viewers, anything like that, definitely check Greg out. He gives us one of the best views from the Buffalo point of view of anybody. One of the best capologists we have. So we trust you, and you have a good night.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, Pat. So we did learn some things. We definitely had some fun with Greg there. And what are your takeaways from that?
Well, I'm good. I'm glad to hear it's nothing too serious with Connor McGovern. First of all, because I feel more comfortable with him in there than Ryan Bates, but that's a different conversation. We went over the possibilities of Andy Isabella making the team. I do agree with Greg on he will come from the practice squad. He will clear and be on our practice squad.
I really, just to touch on that real quick, I really do wonder how hurt is Khalil Shakir? Is he going to be one of those guys that, Andy Isabella makes the roster because of that? So they put him on the short-term IR, and we go through that. So you technically still have 6 guys on the roster, but when Shakir comes back, you figure it out at that point and, go from there. So I'm almost wondering if that's more of the situation that it's going to happen. And, it's unfortunate that Shakir got hurt, especially like a rib injury, being a receiver.
Yeah, because you're constantly going to be hit, But now I do have a question for you. What if you do put Khalil Shakir on the short IR and Andy Isabella comes in and plays well? And then to the point where if you put Isabella back on the practice squad, somebody is going to take him. What do you do there?
I mean, that's tough. I mean, it would come down to the other skill positions, whether it's defensive backs, whether it's, a safety, whether it's, running back, maybe you keep an extra running back, maybe you keep that extra tight end. Maybe if that's the case, maybe they get rid of, let's say they keep 4 tight ends and 6 receivers and 3 running backs and Gilliam as your fullback. So do you cut the extra tight end? I personally would. If I would find a different position, especially if Andy Isabella is, playing well, that you do actually find a different position to cut from to bring Shakir back. But then it comes down to the simple fact that how much better is Shakir going to be than Isabella? If this were, hypothetically, he were to be playing well and working well with the offense and, doing well on special teams, things like that. So it's tough to say right now, but if let's say that scenario were to play out, I would try and find a different skill position to keep him on the team, because you don't want, and I know that you don't want another Isaiah Hodgins situation like you did last year. But the thing is with Hodgins, he couldn't even break our six receivers. So, yes, he was on the practice squad. Yes, he got signed off the practice squad. But who did the Giants have that would have made our top 6 in receivers?
I can't think of it.
Why take a guy from the practice squad and sign him to the roster and lose somebody else at a different position just to have him on there so the Giants don't take him last year?
Right, and who knows what he would have been in Buffalo's offense, because he wouldn't have gotten as many targets as he did with the Giants.
Maybe not. We don't know. But, like I said, I mean, he couldn't even crack the top 6 during training camp, preseason, whatever. He didn't give them a reason to keep him on the main roster.
True.
So that's tough. But it was nice to see him go over there and, make something out of himself and, get a job over there. Would I like to have seen him get a better chance here on the active roster? Absolutely. But at the same time, who are you going to play him over at the time coming in?
Yeah, Diggs, Davis, McKenzie. There's 3 right there.
Yeah.
Cole Beasley we brought back later in the year. So that's 4. John Brown and Josh already has chemistry with them on top of it. So Josh didn't have that with Isaiah Hodgins.
Right. So, I mean, like I said, it could be that type of situation, but I am of the mind right now that I think Khalil Shakir is on this roster. I don't think it, just because we haven't heard anything, I don't think it would be it's not going to be very long, but who knows? Because we haven't heard anything. We haven't seen anything. We haven't heard anything, just like the Connor McGovern injury. We haven't seen anything. So with that being said, what else were you taking away from talking to Greg?
Well, the possibility of Balen Spector possibly middle linebacker. I personally wouldn't mind that.
No, and I wouldn't either. But as far as that goes, you have Terrell Bernard, you have Milano. Those are probably your two. And mainly what he was saying is, eat the guaranteed $2.1 million because you're going to be paying Dodson either way, and get rid of him. And because he truly does. There was another game. He truly looked lost out there. He was playing into the fourth quarter. Like the first 2 series, nobody seemed in position on defense. Just from watching it, nobody seemed to. Because I wanted to forget about that game because, like I've always said on the show, I am a fan still. Like, yes, we do this show. Yes, we have fun doing this show. It's tough to go back to a preseason game where it was such a I don't want to say horrible loss, but
it was an ugly.
It was an ugly game, and it's tough to go back onto that. Yes, I did go back and watch Dalton Kincaid. I watched Spencer Brown. I watched Osiris Torrance to watch those things, but not so much, to watch for if Dodson had somebody in the right position. I was mainly watching him, but he again looked lost like he did in the Colts game. Yes, he made a couple of plays. He made a couple of tackles, but those were more later in the game than they were in the first 2 series. You saw what happened in the first 2 series. So I'm of the mind that I would like to see them get rid of Tyrell Dodson and just take that to eat that money and then keep Balen Spector on the team and have your middle linebackers as Bernard, Klein, and Spector.
I would like that too, because right now you're looking at Tyrell Dodson up against backups.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Pittsburgh, he played into the fourth quarter, and he still didn't look like he looked lost, like you said. And that's not a chance I want to take into the regular season against a team that's going to run the ball in the Jets with Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, who Rodgers is going to target the middle of the field. I'm just not comfortable with Tyrell
And you
Dodson.
need somebody that's going to be able to cover the middle of the field. And, as much as everybody was, knocking Tremaine Edmonds and everything like that. And no, I didn't want to pay him $18 million a year either. But he still started to grow last year once you brought Daquan Jones in and had that true one-tech, guy there. And he was able to focus more on covering and his other jobs that he had. Plus he's an athletic freak. He's 6'5", 245, 250 as a middle linebacker. And he can run sideline to sideline. I mean, no wonder he got $18 million a year once he started showing that he was putting things together. So, but with that being said, we're going to miss him this year because in the middle of the field, unless you have Bernard or Klein or Spector or even Dodson step up and actually play well.
Yeah. Well, it also helps having a good defensive line for your linebacker. It makes their job a lot easier.
It does, but I mean, if you're more of a downhill player like Dodson is, you're not really stepping back in coverage, or you're not used to it, or you're not as fast as the other 2 guys. Like it's tough. It's gonna be tough to see if they were to go into the season with him as their starter. It would be tough to watch it on a weekly basis because he just seems lost with the starters out there. And at least when AJ Klein came in, he got everybody in the right position. He got everybody set. He got, everything looking normal, and they made a couple of stops.
Which is crazy because, yes, AJ Klein has been here for a while now. Obviously, he came back last year. but he knew where to put everybody. Tyrell Dodson, who's been in this defense for quite some time as well, didn't. He looked lost.
I mean, you also have to remember too, Klein was in McDermott's defense in Carolina too.
That's right. I totally forgot about that.
So, I mean, that's really, I would like to see Klein stay on this roster more than I would Dodson.
Me too.
Because number one, I'm sorry, he should have been cut the day that he was swinging his helmet around. I'm sorry, that's
reckless.
That's a reckless thing. You could have gotten somebody hurt. I mean, we saw what happened when Myles Garrett was swinging Mason Rudolph's helmet around. He got suspended and everything like that. So it just, I get the fighting. I get it. You've been hitting the same people for the last month and a half or last month.
But to take off your helmet,
take your helmet off and swing it around, and basically that's almost intent to injure.
What happens if he would have hit Josh in the face? Just saying.
I know.
What? Oops. It was an accident?
Yeah.
It's immature. I understand in the heat of an argument, in the heat of competition, there's going to be fights, but you don't swing your helmet.
No.
It's just common sense.
No, you don't, because it becomes a weapon at that point.
It does. And helmets are not cross.
And that mixed with his on-the-field play, I mean, I don't care what they see in practice. I get it. You see certain things in practice that you're not seeing on the field, or you're seeing things in practice that you're seeing on the field, or whatever the case may be. But the play mixed with the recklessness, I really don't want him on this team anymore. I really don't.
On top of, he had an argument the day before as well.
Yep.
With Spencer Brown, and Josh Allen had to come in and break it up. So that's 2 fights in a row on top of his bad play.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he shows something this week that, because the Bears are more of a running team. Yes, they did add DJ Moore. Yes, they did go out and, do a couple things, but they are typically a run team. They have Khalil Herbert in the backfield. They have Justin Fields majorly in the backfield. What's that?
Dante Foreman from the Panthers last year.
Deontay Foreman. But you saw what they did in the first game against the Titans. 2 short passes turned into long touchdowns.
5 air yards, I believe.
Yeah,
for 100+ yards.
It was like 5 or 6. Yeah, it's crazy what they were able to do. But they need somebody that's going to stop the run in those situations, be able to cover sideline to sideline in those situations. Maybe Dodson comes out and shows that he can do that. But I would rather see, if nothing else, I would rather see him on the practice squad.
Me too. I agree 100%.
With that being said, I mean, what else you got?
Well, what do you want to see out of this upcoming game?
The starters healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
But I really do want to, I get it. I understand, going into the second week or the third preseason game, that's usually when all the starters sit. I even remember when they used to have 4 that typically you would play the starters for 1 series, no matter what happened. And then they would, go sit no matter what happened, regardless of the previous game or anything, just to kind of get them acclimated to, hey, we're going in the season. Let's kind of go out, do the warm-ups. Let's go out and do everything up front. However, this situation, and I understand, like Greg was saying too, is when you're going into situational football and the coaches are looking at your bottom of your playbook, trying to find things in there, I get it. But at the same time, that also puts a bad taste in your mouth. And it should, as a player and as a fan, because they got killed. It was ugly. You basically had what? It was a 3rd and 34 on that second series where Josh got multiple different plays called back. And none of that stuff is on Josh because he wasn't really running. It wasn't like, oh, I have to hold this guy a long time because Josh is running around back there or doing anything.
Yeah.
On that note, too, on the penalties, I don't like to blame the refs.
Yeah.
12 penalties in the first half was excessive, and they were stopping drives that the Bills should have had more reps on. They really should have had more opportunity. That Spencer Brown holding was ticky-tack. That most likely is not getting called in the regular season.
Not at all.
The blindside block or block in the back is exactly the same thing that the league wrote the letter back to Buffalo apologizing for about the Houston game with Cody Ford. It was a side block. He did not hit him in the back, and those things caused that to happen. I mean, you're going now 2nd and 2 because of that screen pass they had with Deontay Hardy, where Spencer Brown makes an awesome athletic play to get out to the linebacker to block him, and then Hardy runs over top, and they're 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, and now they don't have that opportunity to scheme, not necessarily scheme, but like to go into those plays and into that part of the playbook for the preseason. So, but the major thing that I want to see is out of this upcoming game is the penalties fixed within reason. And I want to see them come out and just come down the field and just score a touchdown on that first drive. Like, I could care less about the last preseason game. I'm going to be watching the bottom guys of the roster to see, where they can go. I'm going to watch, the right side of the line to see who we would have there for tackle depth, to see if Quesenberry can hold up. I'm going to be watching the defensive line, things like that. But mainly, I want to see them get that bad taste out of their mouth from the Pittsburgh game and drive down the field and score a touchdown. What do you want to see?
Well, you took the one, besides staying healthy, obviously, I wanted to see a more disciplined team. But I do want to see somebody like Elam maybe not get flags called against him, play a little bit better. I don't think Christian Benford's name has been mentioned a lot throughout the preseason. He's playing pretty well. But I do want to see for sure Kyer Elam play better. And I do want to see, obviously, more of a disciplined team. And middle linebacker, I want to see if Tyrod Dodson plays. Wasn't he dealing with an injury of some sort? He was practicing off to the side.
Oh, Bernard, you mean?
Oh, Bernard, yes, thank you. I do want to see Terrell Bernard play. Hopefully
I would like to, but if they're planning on having him be the starter, I'd rather just let the hamstring heal, because you don't want to have lingering things go on, like you had Gabe Davis last year with the ankle, like you had a few other players last year. But I would rather see them let that heal and be ready for week 1 if that's their plan. But that's really up to them.
And I do want to see Tyrod Dodson play better. I want him to look more in control than lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I want to see Jordan Phillips a little bit more. I know there's been a few people on Twitter going around saying, oh, we could possibly cut him. I don't see it.
I don't either.
Because when healthy, he can be a problem. He can.
Well, that's the thing. He played most of the last year injured. I mean, he got the hamstring injury week 2. He got shoulder injury started, I think, week 14, something like that, 13 or 14.
Yep.
But
cuff.
So I mean, he didn't play a lot last year, and he was injured on a few occasions. He ended up suiting up, when the Bills needed him. But I would like to see him, play a little bit more. Maybe not in the third game, but I mean, I just want to see an effort from the first stringers on that first drive. That's it.
That was the last one I was going to say. Just effort. Just go right down the field, call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, I mean, definitely a good show tonight. Definitely thank you for Greg. you can find him, watch his show at Greg Tompsett on Twitter. Definitely follow them. Definitely follow Cover One at Cover One on Twitter. Check them out on YouTube, and definitely want to thank everybody for joining us. Pat, again, thank you for hosting with me, and again, go Bills.
Go Bills.